Hello everybody and welcome to another reading on Babylon Mystery Religion with Joggler 66 from Hour of the Truth. Today we have arrived at chapter 12, which is called Papal Immorality. And I read chapter 12, 13 and 14 the last days in preparation of this. And this is really something of the part of the book that you don't want to miss, I'm quite sure. So, let's lay back, pay attention, and let's see how the Roman Catholic Church exposes itself more and more and more as the Antichrist of the Bible. Papal Immorality, we read in chapter 12 of the book from Ralph Woodrow. In addition to the conclusive evidence that has been given, the very character and morals of many of the popes would tend to identify them as successors of sun sun-worship priests, rather than the representatives of Christ, or Peter, which we already spoke about, that of course he was not the successor of Peter. Some of the popes were so depraved and base in their actions, even people who professed no religion at all were ashamed of them. Such sins as adultery, sodomy, simony, rape, murder, and drunkenness are among the sins that have been committed by popes. And I have to make a little note here, because, you know, in the book from Dave Hunt, which is called A Woman Rides the Beast, there is finances among his relatives and earned for himself the reputation of being, quote, covetous of filthy lucre and corrupt in all his acts, unquote. Benedict VIII, who reigned between 1012 and 1025, quote, bought the office of Pope with open bribery, unquote. The following Pope, John the 19th, also bought the papacy. You know, when you buy the chair of the papacy, that is called simony, and there are numerous examples of people who did that. Being a layman, it was necessary for him to be passed through all the clerical orders in one day. After this, Benedict IX, between 1033 and 1045, was made pope as a youth, 12 years old. Well, some accounts say maybe 20. Either way, 12 or 20 is still a little bit young to be so-called the successor of Peter and so-called the vicar of Christ, don't you think? Through a money bargain with the powerful families that ruled Rome. He, quote, committed murders and adulteries in broad daylight, robbed pilgrims on the graves of the martyrs. A hideous criminal, the people drove him out of Rome. The Catholic Encyclopedia says, quote, he was a disgrace to the chair of Peter, unquote. Simony. The buying and selling of the papal office became so common and corruption so pronounced that secular rulers stepped in. King Henry III appointed Clement II between 1046 and 47 to the office of Pope, quote, because no Roman clergyman could be found who was free of the pollution of simony and fornication, unquote. A number of the popes had committed murders, but Innocent III, who reigned between 1198 and 1216, surpassed all of his predecessors in killing. Though he did not do the killing personally, he promoted the most devilish thing in human history, the Inquisition. Estimates of the number of heretics that Innocent, who was not so innocently, had killed run as high as 1 million people in this few years of his reign, 18 years, killing 1 million people. Now, for the first time here in the book, we have now the mentioning of the office of the Inquisition. And people say, oh, that was 1,000 years ago, that was 500 years ago, 600 years ago. We don't do that anymore. We are civilized now, aren't we? Well, the office of the Inquisition is today called the office of the Congregation of the Faith. And Pope Benedict XVI, who stepped down as Pope in 2013, as you all know, before Pope Francis, the first Jesuit Pope, jumped in, was the chairman. He was leading the Congregation of the Faith, the Inquisition, today. And it is not because you don't see the dungeons anymore that there are no Inquisitions anymore. Absolutely not. The Inquisitions of today are the wars of today. And World War I and World War II, which was actually just one world war with a 20-year truce ever you do not agree with the teachings and dogmas of the Roman Catholic Church, the seat of Antichrist, you will be persecuted. And that is still until today. Only when you are agreeable in the Roman Catholic Church and being a subject to the Roman Pontiff, he is satisfied, and anybody else who does not agree with that is a heretic, and it is even a meritorious work for Roman Catholics to kill a heretic until today, because they also teach that without the shedding of blood there is no salvation. So for them to get salvation, they have to kill heretics. True Bible-believing Christians, first and for all. Now says the Catholic Encyclopedia, quote, "Scarcely any possible crime was omitted. Infidelity, heresy, simony, gross and unnatural immorality, idolatry, making loss of the Holy Land, etc., etc. Protestant historians generally, and even modern Catholic writers, class him among the wicked popes as an ambitious, haughty, and unrelenting man, deceitful also, and treacherous, his whole pontificate one record of evil." Unquote. Pope Boniface VIII. Quote, "It is not necessary to insist that all charges brought against him were true, but all cannot be dismissed either. During his reign, the poet Dante visited Rome and described the Vatican as a quote-unquote sewer of corruption." Unquote. He assigned Boniface, along with Popes Nicholas III and Clement V, to quote, the lower parts of hell." Unquote. Those seeking to put emphasis on certain good traits of Boniface, I don't know what good traits you can find on any Antichrist, quote, "Catholic historians admit, however, the explosive violence and offensive phraseology of some of his public documents." Unquote. An example of this quote-unquote offensive phraseology would be his statement that, quote, "to enjoy oneself and to lie carnally with women or with boys is no more a sin than rubbing one's hands together." Unquote. On another occasion, apparently in those explosive moments, he called Christ a hypocrite and professed to be an atheist. To enjoy oneself and to lie carnally with women or with boys is no more a sin than rubbing one's hands together, Pope Boniface stated. Lying with boys. Here you have an absolute admission that for the Roman Catholic Church, pedophilia is nothing else than just rubbing one's hands together. And is that a crime? Do you maybe now understand this worldwide abomination of this pedophilia host from the priests of Rome? Where in every town where there is a Roman Catholic Church, there is also abuse of children, most and for all young boys. You really have to think about this, eh? So, as I already mentioned, we come to this next thing after that he on popes, John the 23rd, who reigned between 1410 and 1415, not to be confused with the 20th century pope who took the same name and number, by the way, quote, was accused by 37 witnesses, mostly bishops and priests, of fornication, adultery, incest, sodomy, simony, theft, and murder. It was proved by a legion of witnesses that he had seduced and violated 300 nuns. His own secretary, Niem, said that he had at Boulogne kept a harem where not less than 200 girls had been the victims of his lubricity. Unquote. Altogether, the council charged him with 54 crimes of the worst kind. A Vatican record offers this information about his immoral reign. Quote, His Lordship, Pope John, committed perversity with the wife of his brother, incest with holy nuns, intercourse with virgins, adultery with the married, and all sorts of sex crimes, wholly given to sleep and other carnal desires, totally adverse to the life and teaching of Christ. He was publicly called the devil incarnate. Unquote. To increase his wealth, Pope John taxed about everything, including prostitution, gambling, and usury. He has been called, quote, the most depraved criminal who ever sat on the papal throne, unquote. Well, I'm not sure about that. I think that is actually an account that counts for every Antichrist, sitting on the papal throne and declaring himself to be God on earth. Pope Pius II, who reigned between 1458 and 1464, was said to have been the father of many illegitimate children. He, quote, spoke openly of the methods he used to seduce women, encouraged young men too, and even offered to instruct them in methods of self-indulgence. Unquote. Pius was followed by Paul II between 1464 and 1471, who maintained a house full of concubines. His papal tiara outweighed a palace in its worth. Next came Pope Sixtus IV between 1471 and 1484, who financed his wars by selling church offices to the highest bidders and, quote, used the papacy to enrich himself and his relatives. He made 8 of his nephews cardinals, while as yet some of them were mere boys. In luxurious and lavish entertainment he rivaled the Caesars. In wealth and pomp he and his relatives surpassed the old Roman families. Unquote. Pope Innocent VIII between 1484 and 1492 was the father of 16 children by various women. Some of his children celebrated their marriages in the Vatican. The Catholic Encyclopedia, listen, it's from their own mouths, from their own encyclopedia, mentions only, quote, 2 illegitimate children Rome is built over it, unquote. And this is a very famous quote we find from Martin Luther also in the History of Protestantism by Merle d'Aubigne. One day during Luther's visit to Rome, he noticed a statue on one of the public streets that led to St. Peter's. The statue of a female pope. Because it was an object of disgust to the popes, no pope would ever pass down that certain street. Quote, "I am astonished," said Luther, "how the popes allow the statue to remain." Unquote. 40 years after Luther's death, the statue was removed by Pope Sixtus V. So if you don't study history, like in books like this, where things like these are recorded, and also the sources of these books, you will never know that there was a female pope. But though the Catholic Encyclopedia regards the story of Pope Joan as a mere tale, it still gives the following summary from the Catholic Encyclopedia. Quote, "After Leo IV, who reigned between 847 and 855, the Englishman John of Mainz occupied the papal chair 2 years, 7 months and 4 days. He was, it is alleged, a woman. When a girl, she was taken to Athens in male clothes by her lover, and there made such progress in learning that no one was her equal. She came to Rome, where she taught science, and thereby attracted the attention of learned men, and was finally chosen as pope, but becoming pregnant..." So that's the first male pregnancy we have recorded in the world then. "Becoming pregnant by one of her trusted attendants, she gave birth to a child during a procession from St. Peter's to the Lateran. There she died almost immediately, and it is said she was buried at the same place." Unquote. Was there really a female pope? Prior to the Reformation, which exposed so much errors in the Romish Church, the story was believed by chroniclers, bishops, and by popes themselves. The Catholic Encyclopedia says, quote, "In the 14th and 15th centuries, this popess was already counted as an historical personage, whose existence no one doubted. She had a place among the carved busts, which stood at Siena Cathedral. Under Clement the Seventh, between 1592 and 1595, and at his request, she was transformed to Pope Zacharias. The heretic Huss, from whom come the Hussites, he was a Bible-believing Protestant, a real Christian, as biblical Christianity ordains it to be,